Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Robert Phoenix. Yes, broadcasting to you live. Let me just get my little settings. There we go. Yeah, so I decided to bring some visuals in today and get with the proceedings. How was everybody? Did we all watch that extremely scintillating 9 minutes of Donald Trump inspirationally exhorting the American public to get behind the border wall barrier concrete steel initiative? Let me just check in with the old chat room here. Hey, Judy, how are you? I'm doing okay this morning. Doing all right. I'm a little burnt out. Got a little burnt, a little crispy today. Hi, Anna. How are you today? Good morning to you. I guess we can just sort of let the coffee kind of percolate. Think of this as like the first 3 minutes of this show. Hi, Shauna. First 3 or 4 minutes of the show. Think of it as being like making French roast coffee, the French press coffee. You pour the hot water into the decanter, and then you just let it sit for a while so it can become more coffee-like. What's going on, JMP? Good morning, Paula Tuttle. How are you today? Let's see who else we got. Hey, there's Rob. What's going on, Robert? Good to see you this morning, all the way from California, where it is now 7:20 in the morning. And there's our good friend from Miami or the Florida area, Ani Brito. Good morning, Ani. It's great. Shauna, am I just getting up? No, I've been up. I've been up since 7 o'clock in the morning. I usually get up somewhere between 6 and 7, depending upon how I'm feeling. And so this morning it was closer to 7. And, I spend time in the morning just kind of getting into my body and aligning my spirit and my body together. I have a series of practices and exercises that I don't do. Good morning, Rhonda. Hey, Justice. There's Charles. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Yeah. Yesterday was Bowie's birthday. It was Elvis's birthday, too. And over on Facebook, I reposted a piece I did on Bowie a long time ago. It was back in 1999, and it was a pretty interesting experience with Bowie, I have to admit. Hi, Shari. Shari, are you allowed back on Facebook now? Have they been convinced that you're a good girl and you won't be posting those extreme memes anymore? Oh, Rob's in Michigan. Oh, you're sort of close. All right. Oh, okay. It's Rob Redding, not Rob Scanlon. My bad. Okay, Rob. My bad. Got you confused with another Rob in Sacramento. Let's see. Chris Krim's bad dreams woke me last night. Okay. Interesting. Hey there. Had our Bialetti coffee. Ooh, Bialetti coffee. And there's Marie. Hi, Marie. Nice to see you. Yeah, so the Bowie thing was interesting. And that happened in 99. I was working for a magazine called Mondo 2000. I guess working would be a loose description of it because the magazine was on its last legs. It was really well liked. People loved Mondo. If you were a cyber hipster, you were totally into Mondo. And Bowie loved Mondo. So when came around to release a new record and do press, he wanted Mondo to be on his list. So at that time, I was the music editor, sort of the default music editor for Mondo. So we got a call one day from Bowie's press people. It said, Robert, David wants to do an interview with Mondo and you. I was like, really? That's great. So I went to New York in February of 99 and showed up at the offices of Virgin because Bowie at that time had a deal with Virgin. And so I was in the boardroom of Virgin in downtown New York. And it was a great experience. But the funny part of it was that when he came into the room, I sat there for about a half an hour, just waiting. He's a rock star. You wait for a rock star. It's part of the deal. So I'm sitting there, my palms are sweating. And, I was a big Bowie guy growing up. So this is a big moment for me. And he walks into the room, and the publicist says, David, Robert David. And I get up, and he's got this like glazed look on his face. And he's got these broken teeth. And it's just, I'm like, what is going on with this guy? I always knew he had bad teeth, but I didn't know they were that bad. And why is he so like borderline catatonic and zombie-like? And so I got up and I shook his hand. I'm like, okay, we're just going to see what happens here. And he's staring off into space. He's at the top of the boardroom there. And he was sitting in the CEO's chair, I guess. And I was sitting next to him. And he's just sitting there looking off into space. And he said, and then all of a sudden, he puts his hand to his mouth, and with his left hand, he pulls out these fake teeth. And with his right hand, he slams his hand down on the boardroom, and he says, table says, unflappable. I like that. So I got pranked by David Bowie. And that's how the interview pretty much started. And then went off well. It was a pretty cool time. I often felt like Bowie and I could have been friends. I mean, maybe other people feel that way, but I felt like we really hit it off. We connected. And it was really weird too, because a few years later, it was on the day of his birthday. I think it was 2016. It was 2016. And it was the day of his birthday, and I was doing a show, and it was a Friday. And this was back in, maybe it's 2015. Anyway, it was sort of at the end of my blog talk days. And at the end of the show, I just looked at his chart. I said, well, let's pop in his chart, look at this chart. And I looked at this chart. I'm like, holy shit, this guy could die. And that's what I said. Well, I didn't say he could die. I basically said, let's appreciate him while we can. I mean, the moment I had this like solemn moment with David Bowie's chart, and I just said, let's appreciate him while we can. And then ostensibly 3 days later, he died, right? Now, there are some people who say that he faked his death. It could be. But for all intents and purposes, he did die from our awareness, and it's not been seen ever since. So anyway, if you want to read that interview, it's over on my Facebook page. You can find it, Robert Phoenix, David Bowie, on the old internets. So, hey, what's going on? Tia Bia Mama, expat in Chile. All right. How's it going down there in Chile? Do you like it? Are you enjoying your time with the Chileans? Do you know how many people probably had sex in that boardroom? It was thing in the city to do that in nice boardrooms, no joke. I bet you they had sex and probably did other things besides just sex. I gotta say, the boardroom had kind of a bit of a creepy feel to it. Max, I still need to get an astro reading. I need to figure out how to channel this contradictory Capricorn, Sun, Pisces, Moon energy. That's not too contradictory. Not too You just have to get into the right context, right? It's the right context. Shauna says, you have a very colorful and varied history, don't I? Yes, that's what happens when you're born on an eclipse, which I was born just 2 days after. So people that are born on eclipses, whether they're lunar or solar eclipses, tend to have varied histories, so to speak. It's the nature of the eclipse. Let's see, anything else here? Shari says, I sat up straight at 3 a.m. Oh, she's talking about her dream, I think. Let's see. Charles says, never understood David Bowie's work. No, Bowie was somebody who was trying to simultaneously find himself and lose himself, which was probably why you didn't understand it. He came from a background of like, I think David Bowie probably qualifies either directly or indirectly as some kind of trauma shock, MK Ultra sort of background upbringing. Because if you look into his history, his mother was completely nuts and had left an indelible mark on Bowie's psyche and consciousness. The rumors and he grew up in an area near Dulwich, and the rumors were that the Bowie house was crazy. You remember when you were growing up, there was like always the crazy house on the block. For us, it was a family called the Carlsons who lived around the corner. And the Carlsons were so crazy that one night, old man Carlson got shot by his wife because apparently he was holding his kids hostage with a gun, and his wife had had enough and shot him. He survived. So the Bowies were like the Carlsons, apparently. And David didn't talk about this a lot, but I think something was going on there in a big way. And his older brother, who played a huge influence on his life, used to take him to London and buy him clothes and stuff. And his brother was a tastemaker, a style maker, and his brother wound up going into an asylum, and he spent quite a few years there until he jumped off the roof of the asylum and killed himself. And there's a song that Bowie has called Jump, which is dedicated in some ways indirectly to his brother. So he grew up in a very kind of fractured environment, so it's easy to sort of see this kind of split persona in Bowie, that he's somebody that wants to simultaneously find himself and lose himself. He's an interesting character. I think he was very connected early on. I think there was a plan in place for him. If you look at what was going on in the late 60s, 67, 68, 69, which is when he really begins to emerge, mostly right around 69, he had very, very long hair. Cross-dressing was starting to come into vogue. And it sort of morphed into this kind of glam era where, men were more like women. And he actually talks about this in a very early interview, and he talks about how people who are shamanic, or people who come from shamanic cultures, or people actually who are shamanic, actually are kind of sexually ambivalent and androgynous, and so he saw himself as being part of that sort of androgynous shamanic tradition. It's kind of interesting. But there is definitely a fractured part of Bowie, and he has to, there's a song he does called Cracked Actor. And I think that gets into it a little bit. He did a record called Aladdin Sane, where I think he's really trying to put together his, deconstruct his psyche. He's an interesting character, and not every album is great. But he was very calculated about who he worked with and how he wanted to work with them, and he was very up on musical trends, and sharp guy, very, very sharp guy, and I think a great artist. And some people aren't convinced that his music is always all that great, and he produced a lot of dreck, to be honest with you, but he also produced some really great songs. I mean, Heroes is about as iconic as it could get. Anyway, there's a little reminiscence with Bowie. Let's see, what else? He would be the Goblin King to me. Black Star, that was the end, man. I mean, when he got into Black Star, that was a meditation on death and where he was going. There we go. Yeah, so the other, here, this is an update. Tia Biamama says that they love it in Chile. Throwback to the US in the early 60s, loving it. All right, so if you're looking for a place to hang out, Chile might be a good place. Interesting. All right, so shall we get into the order of the day, which is our, let me go here. Okay, should we get into the order of the day, which I've got this weird delay. You know why? Because I'm not doing the Zoom on my direct connection. I hope it's not too laggy for y'all, as they say. So last night, Trump decided that, well, he didn't decide, he decided before this, but he gave his speech. And, I don't normally watch these things, but I decided, hey, I'm going to take time out. I'm going to watch what Trump has to say. And I have to tell you, it was like really uninspired, but look, there are a couple of things that I think are interesting. Number one is that he um, he had a, how do I say this? He held it together because the rumor is that Trump is dyslexic, and he held it together. He read off the teleprompter. There were a couple times where I thought he was going to lose it. I thought he was going to lose his like train of thought. Like there were a couple of words that he almost didn't quite get. So I think from that perspective, because he never uses a teleprompter, he's always off the cuff because he apparently has a hard time reading. Like I said, he's borderline dyslexic. So that said, I think it probably was a victory for him, like just on a functional level, But he'd been to Camp David, and I just wonder, was like, was that a Trump clone last night? Is that what we saw? Is that why his performance was so lifeless? Did we get like a stand-in? Probably not, but it's one of those things you just have to kind of ponder because of what goes on at Camp David, theoretically, right? So I was like, wow, this is really uninspired. And usually Stephen Miller writes those speeches. I don't think that was a Stephen Miller speech because his speeches are often very polarizing. And in this case, the speech was more of a plea towards people's humanity because there is a crisis on the border. Look, there's some, the biggest deal on the border is the drug trade. I mean, let's be clear about that. There's, millions, hundreds of millions, probably close to billions of dollars every year that's made in the drug trade. I don't have a figure. I don't think anybody does. It's only an estimate. So this is a big issue. I've talked about this before. The impediment to stopping the drug trade isn't the Mexican cartels. It's the people that are making the money here in this country who are essentially above the cartels because the cartels have to deal with like one person, right? Or maybe two people at the most. So there are payouts. There are people that are making huge amounts of money and they don't want the drugs to be curtailed. They want to have as close to open borders as possible. Now, even if there weren't open borders, they'd probably still find a way, but it would be harder. It'd be more difficult. Maybe they just move their operation to the United States and, where there's a will, there's a way, they say. But that's the big issue. That's number one. Number two, I was listening to this guy Frosty Woolridge, who's been on immigration for a very very long time, and one of the things that he was clear about was that it's not just. I mean, one of the reasons why the Democrats have such skin in the game is because this is them developing and grooming their voter base so that they can tilt the scales in terms of how these people are going to vote and redistribute them through states that are, potentially moving towards blue, right? Like here in Texas or New Mexico, which has gone from being a red state to a blue state, and Arizona, which is on the verge of becoming a blue state. And certainly they were able to do that to Colorado. And so it's a numbers game. And there are people inside both parties that are positioning themselves for dominance and or the parties themselves are positioning themselves for dominance, and the left is it's no different. And they want their agendas and they want their programs and they want their model to be the dominant model. And immigration is a plank in that because clearly they're able to, like they move the needle in California for sure. They definitely move the needle in California, and will continue to do that. So they've got an investment in the game, and it's not about humanitarian bullshit. Just, I mean, let's be clear about that, because a few years ago, Chuck Schumer was, all about the wall. Oh yeah, we like the wall, the wall, the wall, the wall, the wall, the wall. Bullshit. Speaking of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, did you catch their act? Did you catch their act? Holy smokes! I'm going to put up a picture here, and this is. You guys gonna? I hope you've had your coffee, because if not, this is gonna wake your ass up. Look at that! Oh boy, they were so uncomfortable last night. It was like they squeezed them into that little podium, little tiny podium, and they were squeezed together. And look at Schumer. Look at it. Look at his eye. Look at that eye. He's got that left eye. Oh my God. Look at that. It was freaky, man. It was I think Nancy Pelosi blinked like 4 times during the entire time. Excuse me, they were doing their rebuttal. I think she blinked about 4 times. And Schumer looked like he was going to a freaking funeral. It was, I mean, if they were trying to really appeal to their base, I mean, come on now. This is not a good look. It's just not a good look. And then you kind of add them up. So here you have Trump, who I give him props for getting through the speech with a teleprompter. That's number one. So you have, but there's no life there. There's no, like people were saying that he missed an opportunity. That this could have been a great moment, a great speech. He could have just came out, and Clint Eastwood did the whole thing, bah, 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 right, and fired up his base and been more polarizing. But clearly, that's not what he was attempting to do. He or the clone, who was ever in charge. It was very toned down, appealing to kind of a broader humanitarian. This was the kinder, softer, gentler version of Donald Trump, but there was no life there. There was no life. There was no essence, no spark. You know what I mean? It was just not there. And so he was kind of, in some ways, his own version of a cutout. And these two totally looked like a cutout. I mean, they were caricatures. They were total caricatures of, who they were, what they were trying to sell the American people. And Schumer said something really interesting. I don't have his bits word for word, but he talked about Trump having a vision. And it was probably unintentional, but that's not the kind of language you want to use. Like, he has a vision and we have feelings or some bullshit like that. Somebody having a vision is usually considered to be, semi-religious, or having the ability to see into the future, prophetic, having some stake in the game. It's not the right kind of language. That he has a vision. He has a vision, and we have, what he should have said is he has a dark vision. It's the Virgo in me. I pick up on these things. But it was not a really great choice of words. Swear to God, Nancy Pelosi blinked maybe 4 times the whole time. 4 times max. And Schumer just, want to see the bad symmetry in his face. I got a close up of him. You got to check this out. I don't mean to scare you guys, but let's see. There we go. Check out that bad symmetry. Look at that. Holy smokes. Usually that's a sign of being programmed. Those are MK Ultra symptoms. That's what it looks like. It looks like he's been hacked. He's been totally hacked. Like, this whole side, the left side of his body, which is the right side of his brain, right? So sleep. This part of Schumer is tranced out completely in that moment. And Pelosi, my God. Who was it? Somebody sent me, I think it might have been Shari, who sent me an image of JFK and Pelosi when Pelosi was very young, and apparently they were lovers. I think it was Shari. Shari, can you confirm that? Is that you? It's either Shari or Lexi. I think it was Shari. Anyway, wouldn't surprise me. Would not surprise me. Now, at that time, and apparently they had a very, very long affair. But if that's the case, that would mean that Kennedy started to have an affair with her around the age of 13 or 14, which would not surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me. She grew up in the Maryland area, Baltimore, Maryland area, so there was probably access. And there's another photo of her where she's like, Miss Baltimore Jiffy Lube or Easy Lube or something like that. She's got a little tiara on. She's down at like a muffler shop or something like that. and she's actually wearing a bathing suit. So I wonder if Miss Pelosi has her own little roots in Kathy O'Brien land. But that would not surprise me the least, because that's what it feels like. And you get a 13, 14-year-old girl, and she's having an affair with a very powerful politician. I mean, that fits the profile, right? I mean, if that's indeed the case, and one would think that it probably could be based on these people, and that Kennedy was no saint until he started to take acid. Speaking of lovers, here's another thing that's crossed my radar here, and it's a story that is very interesting. Let me see if I can find it. Got a bunch of stuff up here. Oh, here it is. All right. Okay, so I'm going to do a little screen share. And if you spend any amount of time on Twitter, you'll know that this story right now is sort of trending on Twitter. This is a Democratic fundraiser by the name of Ed Buck. He lives in West Hollywood. And the young man that's here next to him was found dead at his West Hollywood abode back in, I think it was June or July. And his name was Gamel Moore. So I'm going to read this to you. This is from a website called The Cut. And the author of this, the writer, is Amanda Arnold. So this goes all the way back to, where are we? This is from New York. This is a New York website. It was updated at 9 a.m., but this goes back a ways. It goes back to the summer. On early Monday morning, well, the first death. There's a second death here. Okay, so there's a second death at this guy's house, and it fits the profile of the first death, which is a young black male winds up dead. All right, so we have this. Let me read this to you to give you some background. On early Monday morning, a deceased black man was reportedly found in the West Hollywood home of Ed Buck, a prominent Democratic donor who came under investigation a year and a half ago when another black man, Gamel Moore, this is Gamel Moore over here, died. Let's see, where was it? Died in his apartment. Prosecutors declined to charge Buck in the first death after the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office found insufficient evidence against him, but are now reinvestigating. While few details have been reported, Los Angeles activists are already organizing protests demanding justice for the two men in front of Buck's house. They believe that law enforcement failed to fully investigate Buck in 2017 because of his close ties to elected officials, as well as differences in race and class. Below, here's everything we know so far. According to the Los Angeles Times, a man died in Buck's apartment on Laurel Avenue, little Laurel Canyon action there, sometime between midnight and 2 a.m. Paramedics attempted CPR on him, but he died on the scene. The man has not been named. A law enforcement source described him to the Times and KTLA as a black man in his 50s. Per Buck's attorney, Seymour Amster, the man was a friend of the Democratic donor. From what I know, it was an old friend who died of an accidental overdose. And unfortunately, we believe the substance was ingested at some place other than the apartment. Oh, isn't that convenient? Let me take something that's going to kill my ass and head on over to Ed's so I can drop dead there. Okay. Though the official cause of death has not been reported, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Lieutenant, oh, look who's here, it's Rosie, Derek Alfred admitted to KTLA that the resemblance this case bore to the first incident of a man dying in Buck's apartment was eerie. Ooh, eerie. A strange coincidence. Imagine that. Another black man dies of a drug overdose in Ed Buck's apartment. How crazy is that? It is suspicious that this has happened twice now, Alfred said. Per ABC News, Los Angeles County Coroner's Office is currently performing an autopsy to determine the official cause of death, while homicide detectives investigate simultaneously. Who is Ed Buck? Buck, 65, is a major political donor who gave $23,600 to various California races and causes through June 2018 per campaign finance records. Most famously, he led a campaign to impeach Arizona Republican Governor Evan Meacham in 1987. That's where he cut his teeth. That's where he got his political stripes. Meacham was a very conservative governor. And as you probably are aware of, Ed Buck is gay and did not like a lot of Evan Meacham's policies. So what happened with the case involving Gamel Moore? In 2017, July 2017, Gamel Moore, a 26-year-old black man who worked as an escort, was found dead in Buck's apartment from an accidental methamphetamine overdose. Per coroner's report, at the time, Amster argued that Buck had nothing to do with the death, even though the apartment was reportedly covered in drug paraphernalia. I'll give you a little story, a little side story here. So this has to do with an NFL team, and I know this story because I knew a guy that was kind of close to the situation. Certain NFL team, and the owner of that team had been partying at a restaurant and with some people, former player, and there was a woman who worked at the restaurant. She was a waitress, and she was invited back to a condo that the owner of the team owned, and there were other people there at the condo, and they were all getting high. They basically were freebasing. This was the time when people were freebasing, and so you had to have equipment to freebase. So the owner of the team came on to her, and she didn't want any part of him. So he kind of roughed her up, because he's, high on freebase, and roughed her up. And apparently he got bored or went in to get a drink or something. She used the phone. This is pre-cell phone days. She used the phone in the room, and she called the police. So the police show up, and they know whose place it is. They know who's the owner of this football team, and they smell freebase, which has a very distinct odor and smell. What I've heard, it was never my thing. So they're smelling what's going on inside, and they knock on the door, and they said, basically, you got 3 minutes to get rid of everything, and then we're coming in. So they scrambled, and they got rid of everything and flushed it down the toilet. And they came in, they took a report, and the owner of the team had a out of court settlement with this young woman, so she'd keep her mouth shut, and they both get on with their lives. But I'm telling you the story because this is how law enforcement at times can be very lenient with people who are in positions of power and let them slide for whatever reason. Had that been anybody else, they would have used a battering ram, and that person would probably still be in jail to this day. Okay, so let me continue to read this story. This was a tragedy, but it's no excuse to accuse an innocent man of acts he did not do. There's a thing called a trial. There's a trial, maybe? Investigation, a trial? But a notebook found in Moore's possession suggests otherwise. According to the Times, which reviewed the journal, Moore wrote about using crystal methamphetamine, saying that Ed Buck is the one to thank. He gave me my first injection of crystal meth, the entry read. While the death was deemed an accident, following news of the second man's death, law enforcement officials said Monday that they plan on conducting another review of Moore's case. Activists in the area say Buck has a history of preying on young black men, pressuring them into partaking in dangerous drug use. Jasmine Canick, a progressive Democrat who's running for delegate in the 53rd Assembly District, has worked with Moore's family, told The Cut in an email, for 2 years, I've worked to bring forth witness after witness who told authorities about Ed Buck and how he uses the internet to stalk and prey on young black gay men who are usually homeless, HIV positive and often work as male escorts. The Cut reached out for comment from Amster, who's repeatedly denied these claims on Buck's behalf. As a publication, he has not yet responded. Koenig places the blame on local law enforcement and government for what she sees as intentional inaction, the death of another young Black man in West Hollywood. Home of prominent Democratic donor Ed Buck is on the hands of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and District Attorney Jackie Lacey, she said. Had Buck been arrested and prosecuted in the death of Gamel Moore, chances are that he would not have been around to solicit and prey on vulnerable young Black gay men. How has the public responded? On Monday evening, more than 100 people gathered outside of Buck's West Hollywood home to demand justice for Moore and the second man, as well as Buck's arrest. Their candidate proclaimed that the district attorney's office and sheriff's office had blood on their hands for failing to hold Buck accountable. This was preventable, she said. We knew he hadn't stopped. It was only a matter of time before it happened again. And now it's only a matter of time before it happens a third time. If he's not, well, things come in threes. So this guy, very prominent, he's very connected to the Democratic establishment, funds a lot of campaigns, has become a crystal meth Mac daddy to these young Black men who I actually feel pretty, it's like they're grown ass men. They make their own decisions, but they're children inside. They're absolutely broken, utterly broken, shattered children who probably grew up in really shitty circumstances and are hustling to stay off the streets and do anything. And this dude is a predator. He's a predator, and he's taking advantage of these young dudes who are living a dangerous life. Yes, they're men, but look, there's almost like a version of Arrested Development here with him. This is not good. But I have a solution. I have a solution for this, and I think it's an inspired and creative solution. My solution is that Shaun King should get involved, because Shaun King is quite good at uncovering injustices, apparently, and taking the cause of people from the African American community who have been killed or theoretically abused, for that matter, and using GoFundMe as a accelerator for not only to fund or help fund the survivors of people who have been killed or murdered or might have been raped or whatever kind of transgression has occurred, but also to accelerate the investigative process, because as we know, when Shaun King got involved in Houston, they were able to solve that crime real quick. So here we go. Perfect match. This is a mashup for Shaun King to get involved in the Ed Buck affair. Let's see if he takes that on Twitter, right? Yeah, I don't think that's happening anytime soon. That's not happening anytime soon. All right, let me check in with you folks here in the chat room. And by the way, I'm just going to say something. I'm not focusing on this guy because he's theoretically a Democrat or progressive. There are people on the Republican side that do the exact same thing, or at least their own version of it, okay? We're talking about people that are in power. They're in high positions of power. Apparently, somebody's got some big time dirt on Mike Pence. And people kept asking me about it. It's like, what's happened with Pence? Something happened with Pence. For a long time, Pence has had rumors of, I say rumors because I don't want to say that Mike Pence is a pedophile, but there have been rumors about Mike Pence being the pedophile. And of course, most of you know that when Mike Pence was young, he was gay, right? But he went through the gay conversion treatment and he came out the other side. And now Mike Pence is not gay any longer. Who knows what goes on with those conversion treatments? I don't know. But, that's part of Mike Pence's history. So something happened with Mike Pence over the last month. And I haven't drilled down into it, but I bet you somebody inside the chat room, because you guys are wide awake and aware, have some threads around that. So I'm just telling you, I'm not bringing this up because the guy's a Democrat. But I'm bringing it up because number one, he's in a position of power and they let it slide the first time. And number two, it's happened again. And number three, I really think there's a wonderful opportunity for Sean King to get involved, which is why I really brought it up. So maybe we should troll Sean King on Twitter a little bit. Let's see what you guys have to say about that. What are your thoughts on this bizarre shit in LA? What do we got here? 2 dead, amazing. Eye drop means vague nerve is shut down. Left eye is an indication of mental absence. Vagus nerve. Thank you, Stephen. Max says the reason the elites don't want a wall is because they don't want to lose their endless supply of children without social security numbers. Wow. That's actually a very stone cold observation, Max. Totally stone cold. Hey, there's Juana. What's happening? And there's Jennifer. Hi Nation. Was the emergency declared? No, there's no emergency. No emergency, but they're threatening. They're threatening to declare the national emergency, and it's still kind of on the table. Yeah, I mean the whole thing just keeps dragging on. But Trump can't back down now. He can change the language, but he can't back down. This is his line in the sand moment, and his presidency in a lot of ways is going to be defined to some extent by this, by what's happening with the quote unquote wall and the budget, but mostly the game of chicken that he's running with the Democrats. What's up, cheeky monkey? And by the way, I still think you should have at least 30 days worth of supplies on hand. That's just me. Yeah, so first time I heard anything crazy like that about, yeah, no, Pence has a weird background, very strange background. And, he's one of these Christian Zionist evangelicals, which is, end times rapturites. Okay, so there was a couple other things I wanted to get into today. Let's see. So Ron Paul, who I actually like, and it's really funny. When Ron Paul was running for president, and this was 2008. I actually donated to Ron Paul's presidential run. I didn't vote. I didn't vote, but I donate because I like a lot of what Ron Paul stands for. Not everything, but he's one of the few voices of reason out there to a large extent. Nobody's perfect, and I don't think the libertarian cause is, a panacea for everything. There's a lot in the libertarian platform that I like. So this is what he has to say about the whole migration crisis. Former Congressman and libertarian icon Ron Paul has some advice for President Trump. Instead of building a wall along the southern border to keep out illegal immigrants, maybe he should instead try removing the incentives that attract him to the U.S. in the first place. Incentives like a relatively easy path to citizenship and easy access to welfare benefits. Well, Ron's on the money with that. After Paul said the shutdown isn't significant in the scheme of things, Paul's interviewer, Squawk Box's Andrew Ross Sorkin, asked if he supported Trump's border wall. Paul responded that he doesn't like walls, though he didn't say outright that he opposes Trump's plans. I don't like walls. I'm a libertarian. I don't want to wall people in and wall people out. I don't want free and open borders either, he continued. But that's a departure for the libertarians. I think you have to remove the incentives for people to come here. They come because there's a welfare system here. There's easy access to citizenship. It's politicized. One group wants them here because they think they can get the votes. And that's true. Everything Ron said is true. Paul said he understands the dynamic thanks to his experience working as a doctor near the border, because Ron is from Texas. I'm an OB/GYN doctor close to the border. People would pop in, they'd have a baby, then the next day they'd be at the courthouse signing up for welfare benefits. The guy's been on the front lines. He's seen it. He's delivered the babies, and then the next thing you know, they're on the path, right? When asked whether he and his son, Senator Rand Paul, had discussed this difference in opinion, Paul said that though they talk often, his son doesn't feel like he needs to run all of his political positions by him first. So Ron's idea is to de-incentivize the people from coming here, which I would agree with. My piece is help them have a better life where they are so that they don't want to come here. right? They're just looking for a better deal. This is what people theoretically do most of the time. They want to look for a better deal. If you're shopping for something, aren't you looking for a better deal? Aren't you trying to find something that's of equal value, but is less expensive? You get more for your money. You want a better deal. Whatever it is, if you're looking for a house, you want to get the best deal. These people, by and large, this is the human experience, by and large, they're looking for the best deal possible. Clearly, the United States is offering a really good deal. Come here, you get this, 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 and this. And if you stay here, there's a really good chance you're going to stay impoverished. Your kid will stay impoverished. And not only that, but you might get raped by an MS-13 gang member or fill in the blanks, right? So the idea is to make that place better. Make that place better. Have them not want to leave. De-incentivize and re-incentivize, and then we can have a different life. But, you know, we're dealing with a political game, and they're not always the most creative people, especially when they're trafficking in their ideologies. So at least we know where Ron Paul stands on this. There was this other piece here that I wanted to read to you guys because it was interesting and it relates to something that I got into last week. And this has to do with the fact that a lot of films currently have very hardcore Rambo-like protagonists that are played by women. And I was taken to task by at least one viewer, but it's okay. It was a notice, right? It's a notice. And I believe there's an agenda. There's an agenda afoot to ultimately displace men. I mean, I believe it. If you don't agree with it, that's fine. I can see it. It's very easy to see. Okay, very easy to see. So I found this, this is from RT, and this is quite interesting. And the article is Men Face More Discrimination Than Women, according to new research. That's interesting. Let me read this to you. So contrary to everything you've ever been told, in most developed countries, men are actually more disadvantaged than women, according to new research published in one of the world's leading scientific journals. Well, it has to be true. The academics behind the new study say current ways of measuring gender inequality are biased to highlight women's issues. So they fail to produce an accurate picture. This is what happens with research. They go in, they define the parameters, there's an inherent bias, and then you get results that are along the lines that you were kind of looking for, right? So you have bias. It comes into play. Their new yardstick, snappily named the Basic Index of Gender Inequality, instead focuses on three factors: educational opportunities, healthy life expectancy, and overall life satisfaction. The academics from the University of Missouri in the US and the University of Essex in the UK use these factors to calculate scores for 134 nations, representing 6.8 billion people. The results are in, and surprisingly, men were found to be more disadvantaged than women in 91 countries, while women were more disadvantaged than men in 43. Men are worse off in the US, Russia, and most European nations. No existing measure of gender inequality fully captures the hardships that are disproportionately experienced by men in many countries. So they do not fully capture the extent to which any specific country is promoting the well-being of all citizens. One of the lead researchers, Professor Gisbert Stowé, explained. Here's the quote: "We're not saying that women in highly developed countries are not experiencing disadvantages in some aspects of their lives. What we are saying is that an ideal measure of gender equality is not biased to the disadvantages of either gender. Doing so, we find a different picture to the one commonly presented in the media." Jordan Peterson is going to be all over this. The research, which was published this week in PLOS One, found that the world's most developed countries came closest to gender equality, with women gaining a slight advantage. In the least developed nations, women were nearly always behind men, largely due to lack of educational opportunities. With the BIGI, we are focusing on issues that are important to all women and men in any nation, regardless of level of economic and political development, and by including factors that can disadvantage men as well as women. Professor David Geary from the University of Missouri said, current equality measures are generally biased to highlight women's issues and thus are not really measures of gender equality. Bias. For more than a decade, the Global Gender Gap Index has been one of the most established measures of national gender equality. But Professor Stowett argues that it fails to measure issues where men are at a disadvantage, such as harsher punishments for the same crime, compulsory military service, and more occupational deaths. He also says the complexity of the index means it can be difficult to distinguish whether gender differences are the result of social inequalities or personal preference. You can check the rankings for all 134 countries and get more detailed information about individual nations on the BIGI website. And I'm going to drop that into the text box. So anybody who's watching this broadcast can get more information on the study and see if it actually holds water and if it merits your consideration. I'm going to throw this in here. Okay. All right. So let's see. It says, Carnivorous Force, it might be utopia, but I want to live in a world without borders and walls and without military on top of that. Sounds great. Sounds absolutely great. Sounds like we're about 500 years away from that. Unless, of course, we have a spontaneous awakening, in which case that would be terrific. You know, I saw something really disturbing. I wanted to get the video of it, but I couldn't grab it. And it was a woman. You know, you don't know if these things are staged, right? Like maybe it was staged. I don't know. But if it wasn't staged and if it was just happened the way it was videotaped, there was a woman in Belgium, I believe, or the Netherlands, and she was walking down the street with her baby in a stroller, and she was wearing a yellow vest in support of the yellow vests in France. And she was accosted by about 4 police officers. A couple were riding horses. It was very medieval. And they basically took her away from her baby and put her in a van. Now, I don't know if that event was staged. I mean, maybe it was. Maybe it was. I don't know. But if it was real and on the surface of a real event, pretty disturbing that would happen. And the clampdown now is starting to come to Western Europe. They're going to basically make protesting, they're on the verge of making protesting illegal in Paris. So that's probably going to happen because this yellow vest thing just keeps going on and on and on. And Macron wants to stay in power. And look, yeah, sure, destabilization and chaos, order ab chao. I know there's probably agent provocateurs in there. I mean, there's a mixed cocktail of stuff, right? But the bottom line is that people are getting fed up with the global system. They're getting fed up. They're tired of it. They don't trust politicians. Do you think the people on the left trust politicians? No. Do you think they trust Nancy Pelosi? They'd like to. They kind of have to at this point. Do you think the people on the right trust politics? Well, maybe some people really trust Trump. But I'd say by and large, the distrust of government is at an all-time high in a lot of ways, not just in this country, but around the world. So we're in a time now where it's beginning to sort of implode. There's an involutionary process, and I think we've really reached sort of the apex of things. And at this point, we're going to go through this cycle, and the cycle ultimately manifests itself in a social rebirth. And how that looks, well, I think we're still in the process of determining that, and we determine that every day by our actions and our thoughts and our ideas and what we get involved in. To be honest with you, what kind of world do you want to live in? Do you want to live it? Do you just want to be left alone? You want to get off the grid, go hang out somewhere and be in nature and let the rest of the world sort of, go down in flames? Do you want to live inside of a city where there's a lot of cultural and convenience, but as we move closer to the future, obviously with more of a price to pay? Is that the kind of world you want to live in? Do you want to live in a world where you have some say in the game, where you want to take something back from this position where all these other people get to make these decisions and have the power? Is that the kind of world that you want to live in? You want to participate? You want to create something? You want to be a bystander? Do you want to be a witness? Do you want to play kind of a version of all three or four? You know, what kind of community do you want to live in? Who do you want to hang out with? You know, what do you want to think about when you go to sleep at night? I mean, these are all very, very important questions, and they will contribute to the world that's about to come or the world that we're headed towards. All of it will, but it all starts with you and the type of world that you want to inhabit. And you have a lot more power than you think in order to affect change, in order to, you know, bring something creative and potent into your life. You have a lot more power. This is the great myth that you know, we're all just these powerless minions, that were cattle and chattel, and you know, these elite overlords, the bloodline families. They're the ones that have mastered everything, and they own 90% of the planet. So, you know, do we even have a chance? Do we even have a shot? It's all about demoralization. It gets back to demoralization. And of course we do. You know, there is something very powerful inherently in each and every one of us. We've got the universe inside of us. You know, the universe, the entire thing. And you want to get into no borders, there's no borders inside of us. So the key to it all is to unlock these things inside of ourselves so that they can open up more and breathe, and we can, you know, literally have bigger channels for it to flow through. And I think that's the most challenging part. And I think the biggest challenge that we are really going to be facing is our health. Because if people are sick or tired, I mean, they're just trying to, you know, stay on their feet and get better, let alone open up these channels so that they can become effective agents of change in their lives and maybe the world around them. So that's, I think, the most difficult part, and something that, you know, we're going to, I know a lot of you address it in your own way. And that's where we have to support each other too, is the health piece as well. And then I think the other big piece is isolation, and being cut off or feeling as if you're on an island by yourself, and that there's no other kinds of, you know, life forms out there. But the internet has helped with this a little bit. But being healthy and, you know, having less isolation with positive relationships, I think, is the key. And then being able to disassemble other relationships that have hooks in you, that's a big deal. You want to unplug those so you can have more energy, less drag in your system, and do things that you love. The whole idea, right, is to get lighter. And I'm not talking about like light in the sense of like light worker lighter, but lighter with your spirit, and so you can be inspired. I mean, that's ultimately, you know, where we want to be. We want to be inspired, and then we want to have our own creative activities, you know, and our own creative initiatives. And sometimes, you know, we may have to fight for those, maybe somewhere down the line, especially if they're really important. So not all is lost, but I think you have to ask yourself, what kind of world do you want to live in? And what kind of role are you playing? You're just going to play the string out and see what happens? You want to, what do you want to do? Right? And something I ask myself every day. Okay, let's get back into the chat. Let's see. I wanted to start over where society was less sick. This is Tia Bia Mama. Yeah, I get it. I totally understand this. You know, I think it was like a statistic that 67% of the people in the United States want to get out of the United States. You know, let's see. Rhonda says, "Okay, Shannon, I'm with you. 100% smart communities." What else we have here? We need to get back to small communities. Well, this is part of the small community thing. Is part of the fourth turning. That's what's talked about in Strauss and Howe, that people are moving away from these, you know, these civic structures. They're moving away from big government, and they want to get into places where they can affect change, which is one of the reasons sort of why I moved here to this place, which has 7,000 people, and to being to branch out and learn about different things and experience a different kind of lifestyle. But I think that's where it's at, for sure. I think the cities are going to be increasingly more difficult to be in. Hey, so on Friday, I'm going to have Ra Castaldo on the Friday Firecast, and Ra is a very interesting young guy, and he is of Etruscan heritage, and he's really, really steeped in Etruscan history and mythology and magic. And the Etruscan people were a very interesting group of people that lived in the Tuscany area, who were eventually subsumed by a couple of different groups, the Phoenicians and the Romans. But for about 200 years, the Etruscans were living life in a grand style. In fact, the Etruscans were responsible for building the sewage canals beneath the city of Rome. That was their contribution to Roman society and culture, which was a huge one, right? It was like the first, aqueduct sewage system that was, it's in the quote unquote modern world, even though it really isn't modern, it was created. So Ra's a really interesting guy. I've been on his show a couple times, and so I'm going to have him on Friday, and we're going to take a journey into the world of ancient Tuscany in bringing some of the magic of the Etruscan sort of belief system and esoterica forward. He's even got a ritual that he's going to do live with us, and I'm looking forward to that. So mark that on your calendars on Friday, me and Ra Castaldo. Let's see, anything else? What else here? Indigo Reyna retired to the beach in Mexico, 2008. Nice. Tia Biamama, she says, I haven't had a car in 5 years. Coniferous forest, world without borders and walls, summer all year round. Is not what I need. Not that I need to travel anywhere, but I know that the world is divided and depressing. It's depressing. Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. Anna says Ra is great. Yeah, Ra's totally great. He's cool. Very cool. Okay. Thank you for being a part of today's show once again. Oh, there's Lynn. I found my heaven in Panama. I had to work for it. See, a lot of people are talking about their success stories outside of the country. It's very, very interesting. All righty now. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to shape when it's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Thank you once again for joining me. And you can always get in on the action. Oh, this is the 11th house. I'm normally on the other channel. I got to figure that out. Okay. I'll be back tomorrow, and have a fantastic, and I mean have a fantastic day. I'll see you then.